Nissan has always been great at engineering and designing sports cars that are not only affordable but also great driving machines. I'm talking, of course, about the legendary Z lineup. From the stunning timeless design of the 1969 240Z to the recently unveiled 2022 Nissan Z, they've all had something special to them. So in this video, I'm going to compare two of the best-selling Z cars of all time, the 350 and the 370Z, and let you know which one I think is the best design by analyzing the front, the side, and the rear, of course. And in addition to that, we're gonna have a look at the graphic design elements and see how well they play along with each other in the body of the car. Last but not least, we're gonna have a look at the different proportions and how they affect the overall perception of these two cars, because they are very different proportions. And of course, I'm gonna let you know which one I would buy if I was buying one of these two cars. But before we do that, let's cover some of the basic specs, starting with the 350Z. So the 350Z, 300 horsepower, 260 pound-feet of torque. It weighs 3,200 pounds, 0 to 60 in 5.1 seconds, 60 to 100 in 112 feet. The quarter mile is done in 13.5 seconds, so not bad numbers for the 350. However, the 370 gets a little bit more powerful, a little bit bigger engine, so the horsepower jumps to 332 horsepower, 270 pound-feet of torque, so just 10 more pound-feet of torque over the 350. The curb weight is 100 pounds more at 3,300 pounds. The 0 to 60 time, though, it drops by over half a second, from 5.1 for the 350 to 4.5 for the 370Z, which is pretty impressive. 60 to 0, 105 feet, 7 feet shorter than the 350Z, and the quarter mile is done in 12 and a half seconds, a second faster than the 350Z. So both of these are proper sports cars, and that's what I love about the Z cars. They're not just, it's not like Nissan took some already existing product and just slapped some spoilers and stuff onto that and call that a Z car. So let's start with the front view of the Nissan 350Z and the 370Z. Let's analyze here what's going on and also what I think about both of these designs. First of all, these two cars are very typical for their era. So this is an era, the early 2000s to 2007 or 8 or something like that, when the 350 went out of production. That's how these cars looked like. They were very kind of clean lines, not too much melted cheese going on. That era was passed already before the 350 came out, and to me, the 350 actually is a very timeless design. It looks really good. If we update the graphics, such as the headlights and so on, it could be a car that was produced today in a modern time, just based on the design here. So have a look at the front view here. Compare this front view to the 370Z. You can see that this is a lot cleaner. It just has very sharp lines. There's not a lot of curvature going on here, and it's a simple, very simplistic front end. You see this is a square right here. People are talking about the square now with the new Nissan Z, and that it doesn't suit the car, but the square has always been there, even from the start of the 1969 240Z. It also had a square in the front end. The only difference there is that it was divided by a chrome bumper, so it didn't look as in your face as the new Nissan Z. But when I saw it now recently at the Miami Auto Show, it doesn't look as pronounced as it does in the pictures, and that's always what happens when you look at cars on photos and stuff like that, and then you see it in real life. Your perception always, pretty much every single time, it always changes, and something that might have been bothering you on pictures, it just works a lot better when you see it in 3D in real life. So having a look at the 350 here, the 370 is a lot rounder. You can see that they went crazy here with the styling of this headlight, for example. How they came up with this exact style for the headlight is pretty interesting. I would love to hear the story about the headlight design, because this is also reflected, as we're gonna see in just a minute here, in the rear, the taillights, so they kind of have the same kind of design there. But this is just a more bubbly design than the 350Z. They both look pretty good, but if I had to pick one front end that I prefer over between these two right here, I'm gonna have to go with the 350Z right here, because I like the cleaner approach. You see, you still have this 240Z detail in the hood there, so it was already here in the 350Z, and that's lacking in the 370Z. Overall, it's just a cleaner design, and I prefer that. I prefer the lines and of the graphics in the front end of the 350Z. You can see here, for example, the rectangle here, it goes into this lip down here, for example, and then we have a lot of curvatures here. You even have a curvature in the fog light down here, and it's not as clean as the 350Z. Still a good looking design, but if I had to pick one, it's going to be the 350Z. So let's have a look at the side view here, the most important view, and this is where you can definitely see the changes or the differences between between these two. So the wheelbase of the 350 right here is 104 inches, or it's 104 point something, I can't remember. And the wheelbase of the 370 right here is 100 inches. So it's 4 inches shorter. And you can definitely see that in this side view right here. The 370 at the bottom here looks a lot more compact. And yes, that would probably improve the handling, especially going around corners when you have a shorter wheelbase like this. But just look at how beautiful the 350 is up here with this stretched out wheelbase. It looks like a more nimbler car, even though this is probably better in the corners, the 370 with a shorter wheelbase. The looks and the perception that I have of the 350 is a lot cleaner than we have. Same thing here as we have in the front view. Just have a look at the line flow here. Let's study the line flow of the 350, and then I'm going to show you the exact line flow of the 370. I'm going to show you what I mean here, specifically the graphics and the proportions. So I love this part right here. We follow the greenhouse. If we draw a line straight down, you can see that it creates the taillight here, and this is a detail that I love about the 350, how the greenhouse continuation of the C-pillar goes into the taillight. That's something that I've always loved about this design, and it's just a genius little touch. And then if we follow this around, you can see that it creates kind of a framing for the door right here, and I think that's a beautiful touch as well, just playing around with the cut lines of this design. And on top of that, we have a straight line for the shoulder right here going into a beautiful, just simple curvature right here, and then straight down in the front end. Now, if I were to change something about the 350Z, is that it doesn't necessarily have a lot of Z history in the rear end with this little trunk like right here that sticks out, but it doesn't really bother me that much. I mean, you can differentiate at some point from the traditional Z design, and I think this 350 does a good job of bringing something new to the table with this longer wheelbase right here. And these wheels, I think these wheels look great as well on the 350. We're gonna talk a little bit about the Nismo models of both of these at the very end of this video, because those are worth mentioning and the design of those. So let's have a look at the 370Z down here, and let's have a look at the line flow right here. So this has more of a 240Z tail right here with this dipping line right here, which I actually prefer if I just look at the silhouette of these cars, but not when it comes to the graphics. So we can see here that if we create the same line here, this goes into this taillight right here, which is a lot more organic than we have right here. I prefer the harsher, sharper design of the 350 right there. And we also have more of a designed greenhouse shape, and we have this GTR style sharp angle between the A-pillar and the rest of the greenhouse up there, which we don't have in the 350. So this is a mix of sharp and soft mixed together. And as we mentioned before, it's shorter than the 350Z, but it's also wider and lower. So it's like a squished 350Z in all kinds of dimensions, which will probably make it great on track, but it doesn't just have the elegance of the stretched out wheelbase of the 350Z. And I think you can see that specifically when we look at these two cars right here from the side view. Same thing here. If I had to pick one of these designs that I think is the cleaner version, you're gonna know which one it is. That's obviously going to be the 350Z. I just overall think the 350Z has a more timeless approach to the lines and the proportions of the car. Now let's just quickly talk about the rear view here as well, between 350 at the top here and the 370 at the bottom. So here I think you can see the width of these two cars. What I love about the 370Z here is how they almost implemented almost like a wide body kit here with this massive fender in the rear, which also brings it to a wider car than the 370 up here, 350 up here. But at the same time, this is still a very clean design, and here you can definitely see how both the roof line goes in and creates the taillight here, and it's connected also to the shoulder line. So this design right here is very beautifully done, and I can see just how it was made with a sketch, with a hand sketch, like it's lines that just intersect, and then you create a graphic feature naturally out of the shapes and the lines that you intersect with each other of the car. That's what I love about the 350. I also like the simplicity of the integrated taillights here, the reverse light in the back, and a simple solution for the tailpipes. Just back two big tailpipes there, and you have a good looking clean rear end. This is also clean. There's nothing wrong with the 370Z down here. I think this is the best view of both of these cars, is from a 3/4 rear view like this. This looks super planted, specifically when it's squatting with these two big fenders on each side of the rear end of the 370Z. You also have a very simple design right here in the rear end with the two taillights, and you can see a little bit more connection to the taillights here and to the rest of the lines of the car. It's a beautiful design, both of these cars, but the same thing here. The timelessness of the 350Z just wins overall when it comes to these two designs, and that's the one I prefer, not just because of the graphics and the lines that intersect and create some cool elements in the rear and in the front, but also the proportions. I do prefer the longer wheelbase over the shorter, more stubby wheelbase of the 370Z, even though that might affect handling on the track. Now, I think you already know which one I would buy based on what we've talked about so far, but I quickly want to show you the Nismo versions of this. I think when you look at the Nismo 370Z here, it totally completely transformed the design of the car, because now not only do we have these wide fenders right here sticking out on both sides, we also have these very aggressive air outlets right here, and this beautiful diffuser at the bottom with two tailpipes, massive like that. And instead of having a wing that sits on top of the trunk, this now has a beautiful integrated ducktail that's integrated in the body of the tail end right here. It's a beautiful, simple changes to the rear end of the 370Z Nismo, but I think it totally transforms the car. And I think this looks so much better than the original, the normal 370Z right here compared to the Nismo one. This is definitely the one I would buy if I was going for a 370Z, just based on the looks of the body style and the small graphic changes to the design. It just makes it, to me at least, a lot more attractive. I just quickly want to show you, before we end this video, the 350Z Nismo. What I love about this is just how crazy Nissan went with the graphic features of the rear end. Just look at how beautiful these taillights integrate in the body. You also have a very wide fender right here, and you can see how beautiful it sticks out right here. It just plants this design onto the ground like this. It just stamps on the ground, sitting hard, hugging the ground. And I also love this squared out. This looks like it's just a square that they put a diffuser in and then created this diffuser inside of this square. If you look at this from another angle, you're gonna see how far this thing sticks out from the bodywork, and I love it. It's such a big difference from the regular 350Z and the Nismo here as well. I think Nismo, both the 350Z and the 370Z, I think the 370Z it suits better with the Nismo package. The 350Z, it looks cool with the Nismo package, but it loses some of that elegance and the timelessness that the standard 350Z has in its lines. And adding stuff onto this, it looks like a cool car, but I think if I had to buy a 350Z, I would probably go with the regular version with some really nice wheels to set the whole car off, and without these wings here. Even though I love this design, I love how crazy Nissan went with the Nismo package for the 350Z, I would still pick the regular 350Z. If I was buying a 370Z, definitely go with this beautiful Nismo package, probably in white as well, because it sets off the carbon fiber or the gray accents. I don't know if these are carbon fiber or not, the gray accents and the red little pinstripes all over this car. But what this really boils down to right now, today, at this moment, is it just makes me appreciate Nissan Z more, specifically after we saw the Acura Integra presentation and that car, and how just lack of effort they did when bringing back the Integra. And then you look at the new 2022 Nissan Z and how much effort Nissan actually put in making it a part of the lineage of the Z cars, going back all the way to the 1969 240Z, and still have a lot of connection with that car, with the 2022 model. It just makes me appreciate what Nissan does even more than I did before.